Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Practical Bitachon in 22. It's going to be in 15 minutes. Again, this is a 15-minute class, as we always talk about. 10 minutes we will have just learning about Shaar Habitachon, Gate of Trust, and then 5 minutes we're going to read from a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, In Good Hands. Tonight, or whenever someone reads it, it's Gimel Tammuz, which is the yard site, the passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, Zechron Lavacha, who was such a big inspiration and is a big inspiration for being able to do the Shaar Habitachon, to be able to continue to make sure that people always had, let's say, the strength to be able to really go on. And this was right after the Holocaust. Think about this was 1952, the letter we're going to read today. These are right the years after the Holocaust, the challenges Jewish community is going through, the world is going through. And so really the Rebbe brought such a light and does bring a continuous light, the whole entire world. And so with that, we're going to start. I want to share a story first before we start. Today we're going to be learning about what happens with someone, it's a wicked person that has wealth. And there's a famous story that many of you might have heard of before with a person named Yosef. Yosef was a person that loved Shabbos. When Shabbos was coming, he would buy the most beautiful, beautiful fish. And every single week he would go make sure that the food was nice. Shabbos for him was the most special thing out there. And there was a very, very wicked miser in town who saw through astrology, saw that there was this person, Yosef, supposed to get all his money. And what happened was he was such a miser, he didn't want to be able to comprehend how is it possible this Jew, this poor Jew out there, Yosef, was going to go get his money. So what did he do? He went and he sold all of his money and he got himself everything, all his possessions, and he got himself a beautiful gem. And he said, you know what I'm going to do with that gem? I'm going to sew it into my hat. He sews it into his hat. And he says, you know what? Now I know I'm going to be safe. All the money is going to belong to me. And what happens? One day he's walking down on a bridge. And as he's walking on a bridge, a massive gust of wind goes flying out. And what happens? The hat flies off his head and it goes into the water. He says, oh no. And he sees the fish, come and it grabs the hat. Lo and behold, we're going back to Yosef. Yosef goes to every week, he goes to get his fish for Shabbos. And he gets to the store, he gets there, he buys himself the most beautiful fish. And when he's cutting up the fish, all of a sudden he finds inside the fish, he finds a diamond. He finds this gem. And he becomes very, very wealthy. And this is something that's really fascinating in the story, is how every person out there, you would think, okay, you know what, the wealthy people, they're going to keep their money, it's going to belong to them. No, here's a story that what happened, this person had his money, and his job was to just be able to hold on to this money for someone else, so someone else could become rich. And so here we start off over here today with, if God doesn't want him, this is talking about a person that has a lot of money but is a bad person. So if a God doesn't want him to derive any enjoyment from his riches, why then does God leave it to him? So it will be with him as a deposit. So you'll guard it from harm until the time that it will be returned to the one who's deserving of it and for whom it was meant. And this is exactly what we said, that this person, Yosef, this Yosef Moker Shabbos, which was his name, was Yosef, who loved the Shabbos, was cared about the Shabbos. This was his whole thing. Hashem wanted him to be able to be rich. And what happened? This person, this miser, collected all this money, had all this money in order to be able to give it to someone else. So this concept that sometimes a person is given wealth solely for the purpose of safeguarding it for another is going to be, we're actually going to say two different psukim that bring out two different verses that are going to talk about how this is really possible. So it says, and the sinner, and to the sinner, Hashem gives the urge to gather and amass wealth, to give to the one who it's good for. Literally in the exact story we said, this sinner, this miser, had all this money, And his job was to be able to collect it, all the money, in order to give it to someone else. And then it's going to bring another pasuk. It's going to bring another one. It says, "And the wicked man will prepare, and the righteous man will use it." Literally, what's happening is exactly what we just said. And the innocent will divide the money among themselves, which is really speaking about that the wicked people, they're just preparing it. They're working on getting the money for someone else. So sometimes you might see someone that is so wealthy, and the person has so many flaws. Maybe they're really struggling inside because they really can't. They're so concerned with their wealth. There's the famous story. There was this guy that was so rich that he literally held on to his money. He had to have security guards around him all the time. He was terrified of losing his money and people harming him. So for him, the biggest curse was to have all this money. And so we're going to go down to what we discussed, two possibilities of what might happen to a person who relies solely on his wealth. One is he might lose it. Or the second thing we're saying is that even if he retains it, he'll not be able to enjoy it. And it's crazy to think about it, that there's multi-millionaires and billionaires that they're never happy with their life. You think, hey, I'm going to have $1 million, I'm going to be amazing, I'm going to do well. No, it does not mean that. It could mean the same struggles, the same challenges that we all have. And so now we're going to say that sometimes not only is he not able to enjoy his wealth, but the wealth will cause bad things to happen to him. And it says it's possible that his money will be the cause of his misfortune, as well as the cause of the destruction of his soul. And I love this line. Sometimes money could be the source of a person's physical and spiritual downfall. And literally that happens. You hear stories of what happens. A guy becomes haughty, and all of a sudden he thinks it's all about the money. And what happens? They start doing illegal things. And with those illegal things, they're trying to amass more money and do other things like that. And at the end of the day, all of a sudden their life is filled with misery. So I'm going to throw this out there to us just to understand that sometimes, you know what, the biggest challenge that people could have is the challenge of wealth. It doesn't mean it's a good thing that you could give out more charity, do good things with that, which we're going to read after. But the point is, we have to realize if we're going to use it and it's going to be used for arrogance, we're going to show, hey, look how haughty I am, look what I have over here, these lavish things. That's not the point of our wealth. If we're using the wealth out properly, then you know what? Then, God should give you more and more and more, for sure. But we have to make sure that that's the point of the wealth. The wealth isn't for our own arrogance, our own haughtiness, and it's a challenge. It's a real challenge that we deal with. So we're going to go to the next part where it says, the pasuk says, there is a sickening evil that I've seen under the sun, which are riches hoarded by their owner to his own misfortune. So really, we talked about the advantage of bitachon, that of course causes a person to feel at ease. A person who relies on the other people or his own talents or wealth will always worry that his success will not last. It's crazy. People that have money, it's not enough. I have $1 billion. I got to beat the next guy next to me. I have 2 billion. You would think it's a drive almost, that, hey, it's a positive drive. But where's that point where it's a negative drive? You have to be very, very careful about that. You get money, great. I got money, but if I'm using it for the wrong things, that's a challenge. And so we have that now. The author is the Shaar Habitachon. The Mechaber is gonna talk about now the Torah advantage of Bitachon is that the benefit among the Torah benefits of Bitachon is that a trust in God will bring a man not to serve any other entity. Any other entity could mean, not only is it, you're talking about back in the day about idol worship, but sometimes any other entity could feel like what we just talked about. Hey, look at my own wealth, what I did, my arrogance of what I did. Look at what I did with my company. Think of today's practical day. Look what I built. I built the biggest companies out there, Google, Facebook, who knows what. Every company out there, that could come to arrogance. And that's our job, is not to be able to do that, to be able to show that, hey, what are we doing? We're doing all this stuff just to be able to serve Hashem. And he won't need to place his hope in man or expect anything from other people. And as a result of self-reliance, he will avoid many behaviors that distract him from divine service. He won't need to be subservient to them in order to win their favor, and he will not feel the need to flatter them. This is a big, big piece that we challenge ourselves with. We see people that are wealthy, and we feel like we have a job to be able to flatter them, to make them feel good. And that's not, and again, obviously you want to respect people 100%, but where's the part where there's a fine line between where it comes down to respecting a person, and from there where it comes 1 second. Zami, I think your thing's I'm gonna say let's go to mute. Okay. So he will therefore not consent to spend time with them on matters that are not related to the service of God, and he will not be afraid of their wicked behavior, their repercussions of not flattering them, and he will not be fearful of the arguments with them. Just because someone has money, it doesn't mean that if they're doing something wrong, oh no, he's a wealthy person, I can't go say something to him. No, if someone's wealthy, it doesn't mean that you can't, they have the same exact God, they have the same exact laws, and they have to use their money in the right way. So here we're going to go on to today's letter. Was a fascinating letter that I read, and I wanted to share that with everyone. It starts off by the grace of God on the 2nd of Sivan, 1952. Greetings and blessings. Again, if it was for your letter of 9-4 and 2-5 reached me after having been delayed on their way here, and I was very happy to read that your wife's confinement went well, and that she gave birth to a son who is named ... Just one thing, confinement, there's one about jail, but there's one about also when someone gives birth to a child, that's also another definition for confinement. May God grant that you, together with your wife, should raise him and your older son to the study of Torah, to the marriage canopy, and to the practice of good deeds, and may you be granted an ample livelihood. Really, really important that this is a blessing that the Rebbe gave to everyone for their children when they had a child. And for obviously for a boy, this was. Your letter mentions your anxiety about your income. You ought to keep in mind something that is written in the holy books, that when a son is born, this is an auspicious sign of blessing in the household. That includes one's livelihood. And this is a challenge that we have all the time fundamentally is, hey, if I have more kids, I have more bills, I have more challenge, more expenses. No, this is what he talks about. In order to accelerate this, one needs to be strong in one's trust in God, for this is he who provides nourishment and sustenance for all, and seeks to do so from his full hand. So we're saying again, Hashem's going to provide for us. We have to be extra strong in that, not getting fearful about it. Even for myself, I remember my own challenges of like, wait, you have one kid, what's that happen? It's going to cost money for school, extra food. They have two. The money, Hashem makes it that the more children you have, the more things like that, there's more money to it. It comes with it, because again, you can't survive off the same salary you had no children as you have when you have one child. It doesn't work that way. When you have more children, expenses go up. It's reality. So obviously you need to have a bigger vessel then to be able to make more money. So another thing to keep in mind is that one has to fashion vessels that will contain God's blessings. In general terms, this means studying Torah and observing the mitzvahs. In particular, it means contributing to tzedakah. If a person thinks that his livelihood is meager, he should donate more than previously. In the way he shows that his charitable needs are greater than heretofore, and as a matter of course, he will provide a greater income than heretofore. May God grant that you and your wife be both be firm in your trust, and that you will soon see the fulfillment of God's blessing for an ample livelihood, with blessings for sound health, for yourself, your wife, and your children, and a happy Shavuos festival. I want to just say like this: just more charity literally brings more wealth, and it's something that you see all the time. And just again, you try it. We said this before. You have $5 you give to charity, whatever it is a week. Give $6, give a drop more, and you're just building that vessel. Hey God, I'm giving more to tzedakah. I'm doing more of my part. Hashem's going to do more in His part. That's really what it is. And I know we've had this discussion before with many people of growing up, and it could be challenging. Hey, my family had a lot of children, and it was challenging, financially and all that. And again, I hear that a lot, and I think one of the things for us to be able to do is really work on our bitachon and realize, what, we have to be able to, when there's children that come into the family, or when we're going to have other things, there's going to be more expenses. I'm not taking that away. But at the same time, because of that, what we're doing is we're building a beautiful, we have to build a larger vessel. And we start building a larger vessel, and what's going to happen from that? We're going to be able to get more money. So let's all do that. Give a drop more charity. I'm going to do that as well today. Just give a drop more. Could be a penny, a dollar, whatever it is. Give something a drop more. And we're all going to see the blessings with that. Wishing you all a fantastic, wonderful, wonderful day.